We've also got Raghu from Markaz, Adam Chalice, who's head of our UK residential research business, Zaina from the Bartley Group, and John from Argentech. So the idea is that we're going to give you an overview of the UK market from a sort of a Brexit standpoint, an economical standpoint. Zaina talk a little bit about the Bartley Group projects, an overview of the currencies, previous trends, the current trends. Whilst we don't have a crystal ball, sort of Argentech's thoughts about perhaps where the currencies are over the next sort of 6-12 months, and then obviously Raghu from Markaz will also give an overview of their thoughts. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Adam, and we welcome any questions during or after, please. It's meant to be an interactive session. Try not to bore you with PowerPoint too much. So without further ado, Adam, please.
Thank you, Will. Good evening from me. I'm Adam Chalice, as Will said. I have the pleasure and privilege of running the residential research team for JLL in the UK and across the Europe and Middle Eastern region. What I want to share with you this evening is really a bit of an update on the residential market in the UK, specifically thinking about London, but placing that in the context of course, quite a lot of political disruption, some economic disruption, of course, related to those changes politically, and how they're playing out, how they are manifesting in London residential. The truth is, in fact, of course, there's quite a lot of uncertainty, quite a lot of commentary in the popular press, international as well as domestic, mostly related to this young lady and what she's up to. The European Union referendum, the Brexit vote, as it's referred to, of course, has created quite significant disruption to the UK economy, and will continue to provide a layer of uncertainty, both in terms of economic investment and more directly in terms of activity in the housing market. So we have seen some weakness in activity, some weakness in pricing during that period. I think that's important as a sort of a statement of context at the outset, and we haven't had a difficult period, because I think when you're speaking to an audience, an international audience that might be looking to London for its fundamental attributes as an investment location, then there are a number of sort of key drivers that you want to be thinking about in terms of that the quality of that investment over the long term. So I'll start by sharing with you some research that was presented by some colleagues of mine at Davos a few weeks ago at the annual forum at Davos, looking at the strength, the might of cities, global cities, and really based on a whole range of factors, in fact 44 different factors, trying to understand which cities really are the strongest, the most powerful cities economically, politically, culturally around the world. And of course, London, having come out on top, really captures the best of many of those attributes in one. Being a political and an economic heart, being a very international city. It's the case today that more than 1/3 of Londoners, or 1/3 of London residents, are in fact born outside of the UK. It's a very international city. I'm sure in this room I don't need to dwell on so many of the different attributes that make up London's strength. Of course, at the same time, London can't rest on its laurels. As we're pointing out here, there are a number of what we call contender cities, cities that are on the rise, on the move, many from this region as well as from Asia. And it's important to think about London, not just a historic city, a city with all sorts of attributes that we think about from its past, but actually a city that is also looking forward. We'll talk about those points in a moment. I focus specifically with this slide on the financial services industry because, of course, it gets particular attention in the Brexit conversation. Many people talk about, many press articles are written about the financial services, the bankers, the banking industry moving to continental Europe, or at least portions thereof. So this index, which is not our data, this is the Zed index of the financial services industry, of the big cities in financial services and how they're faring at the moment. London has been the perennial top performer, has been the #1 city for quite some time. And I have to say, we thought this year London might lose that crown. We thought London might lose to New York as the top city in the world for financial services. That it was still number one, I think, is a statement of its resilience. It's also a statement, perhaps, of, as the Brexit conversation has moved forward, that in fact, many of those presumptions around bankers moving to Frankfurt or Paris or Luxembourg or Dublin, those presumptions have not come to pass. London continues to be the dominant force for financial services across Europe. And as you can see, the next nearest city, Frankfurt, within the European Union, is a long way down the list. There are two cities, of course, from Switzerland, not in the European Union, that are also there, but a long way behind London. So I think it's an important statement of context, with all that noise in the popular press, to see that actually London continues to be a clear outperformer in the global race for financial services. Of course, I made that point earlier about London not resting on its laurels, a very forward-looking city as much as it has these strengths of historical context. FinTech is one of the areas where London has seen a real surge in employment, and the graphic behind me really just demonstrates that the financial technology sector, the booming sector, right in the city and right on the edge of the traditional square mile, the traditional banking heart of the world, that employment base continues to rise and rise strongly. So London, of course, has got some other attributes that are really important to underscore, and one of the most basic is simple population growth. It grew by about 1 million people over the last decade. It will continue to grow by about the same rate over the next decade. And as you can see, it will be a city of over 10 million people in the not too distant future. So in the context of the Western world, where many cities are in fact stabilizing, or certainly in national terms, national population growth is stabilizing even if some cities continue to grow, London continues to see an overweight of demand, an overweight of activity, an overweight of people that are still looking to access that broad employment base, that exciting dynamism that I think articulated fairly clearly on the previous slides. But tying this back to the residential market, London has a problem, and it's this. London can't build enough homes. Right? London can't build anywhere near enough homes to satisfy that demand. The draft London plan at the moment suggests that London requires 66,000 homes every year to keep up with that rate of demand. And current rates are 23, 24, 25,000 homes per annum. Nowhere near half the rate that is required to keep up with the rate of population growth. And of course, well, I might be an economist, but you don't need to be an economist to understand the implications for price and for rents as a result of that sort of supply-demand imbalance, that upward pressure on the existing limited availability of stock becomes a perennial challenge for London, and of course that's why we see some of the unaffordability issues showing up as strongly as they do in London, perhaps more so than any other city in the Western world. Breaking that a little bit further, this is the way we separate London. This is new build pricing. For those of you who are familiar with London, this is broadly zones 1 and zones 2 of the London Underground map, so central zones. And you can see, of course, there are some very high value locations, and there are some areas that are more modestly priced, even within those central zones. That generally is a story that is high value in the traditional central west locations, the darker tones on this map, seeding out towards the east, where actually you see a lot more post-industrial development and regeneration enabled by big infrastructure like Crossrail, starting to bring those places forward, but at the moment from a relatively lower base. Those tend to be the areas where mainstream Londoners can still continue to think about affording a London property, whereas those prime zones, those high-value zones, tend to be a far stronger catchment for international wealth. Of course, I'm making a statement of the obvious for many of you who will be aware of the Chelseas and the Knightsbridge, the Mayfairs of the world, but that's really the dark tones there. And they've been through some challenges of late. Of course, some of those induced by legislation. We had some changes to stamp duty, the transaction tax in the UK. We had some changes to capital gains tax. We've had some changes for some who are looking to get mortgage taper relief. Of course, all of that playing together in the context of Brexit has meant that high-value properties have gone through a bit of a repricing over the last couple of years on balance. I think it's important to state at the outset, but also to point out that, of course, for those who are investing in residential or investing in any market, you tend to make your money not by buying at the top, but by buying at the bottom, buying when the opportunity is showing up. And one of the things that I want to suggest to you this evening is that some of that fair value is starting to show up in pricing in those prime locations. But just following my theme for a moment of the development activity itself, this is a graphic that shows the volume of construction in those central zones. And you can see, of course, as I suggested previously, quite a lot of the activity is towards the east, where you can see big numbers of new supply coming forward enabled by that new infrastructure. In contrast, the central zones have relatively lower numbers of development activity. And if you roll the graphic even further forward, looking at planning permissions, you can see a real paucity of activity on the horizon. In fact, in some locations, almost no planning permissions, no activity, no applications coming forward. That suggests to me that the supply story that many talk about in central zones that is being washed through at the moment is not being replenished by the next wave of new activity. And so if my thesis is right about potentially some new, some fair pricing coming through and a lack of supply following in behind it, that supply-demand imbalance starts to come forward and start to be a more pressing issue for those markets. Now, it's important to make the statement that, of course, in any market, choose carefully, be selective about the opportunities that you're looking at, and generally with residential, because of the transaction costs, often it's a longer-term mindset that is the more successful. But having said that, the point that I'm trying to tease out is I think there are some quite significant opportunities in this market for those who are willing to spend the time and look. I think there's some quite exciting changes that are taking place in a very dynamic space, in a very dynamic market. So looking forward, of course, there's a whole range of reasons why people look to London. We tend to group them broadly into two camps. One are opportunistic reasons. That might be the population growth story. It might be the long-term capital growth rate, which I'll come on to in a moment. There are also defensive drivers, geopolitical risk from around the world. For example, in this region, of course, the shift away from oil wealth, the need to invest more broadly across a range of different industries, across a range of different asset classes in order to diversify. That becomes a more material issue. So what I think is fascinating about London is many of those different issues, as you can see on the slide behind me, are being brought to bear at any one time. That's a statement of resilience for the market. It means that the market is not overly reliant on any one particular attribute, any one particular rationale for buying in order to make it work. It means that there are people that are looking for the capital growth opportunity, looking for the upside at a certain phase in the cycle. And there are other folk that are simply interested in preserving wealth. And both of those drivers can be a balance point for this market. It's a statement of resilience around prime markets, and it's relatively unique to central London. There is a story here that I mentioned earlier around tax. So, it's an evening seminar. I don't want to be too heavy with you on tax, but it's important just to highlight the graphic behind me demonstrates the changes that have happened to global cities in terms of the transaction cost of buying residential. This is based on £1 million property. But the graphic is a little misleading because it's only based on domestic costs, so the cost of buying within a country. So in the case of London, as a British national or as a British resident. Of course, if you compare to international buyers, London doesn't change because London doesn't distinguish, or the UK tax law doesn't distinguish in residential terms between international and domestic purchases and with respect to stamp duty. However, other jurisdictions around the world very much do. You think about Sydney, Melbourne, Vancouver, with a 15% international-only stamp duty charge on top of the domestic charge. That's the graphic you can see on the far right. Quite stark differences in stamp duty costs. So I think it's important to think about some of those changes to tax that many have dwelled on with respect to London residential, to think about it in a global context, because actually in a global context, London still looks like fair value. There's another way of looking at it, which is around the cost of residential, that same map that I showed earlier, based on different currencies. Now, I won't go into this in great detail because that will be covered in a moment. But what you can see is an arbitrage in value that has opened up based on whether you're buying with a pound sterling, which is the red line, or with other currencies, notably the USD or USD pegged currencies, which is one of the gray lines. You can see quite a significant arbitrage has opened up. That arbitrage, it should be said, is already beginning to close. It opened up as a result of an unexpected Brexit result, referendum result. What we've learned over the intervening period is, in fact, the referendum result has not been as big of a potential catastrophe on the economy or on the housing market as it might have been. And as a result, frankly, alongside Donald Trump continuing to drag on the US dollar, we've started to see some of that arbitrage close up over time. And actually that statement of confidence, I think, returning to the Great Britain pound. Now, I mentioned earlier the comment around the long-term growth rate, long-term capital growth rate for London residential. And this graphic is really just there to highlight its comparison with commercial property or with equities over the long term. And that red line across Greater London shows a little bit more than 6% ungeared growth over the 30-year period. Of course, if it was a graphic of prime London, it would show more like 8.5% per annum. So a significant long-term outperformer over the period, and certainly in comparison to other major asset classes or alternatives. So I just wanted to finish really with a summary of some of the big macro figures that I talked about early on. And in fact, the figures behind me are not today. These are figures from 6 months ago, and deliberately wanted to share them with you because they are the basis of our current forecasts. And even though they are 6 months old, they've already started to demonstrate some signs of change, some signs of a little bit more certainty than certainly we had even back then. It's worth noting that, for example, the macroeconomic story with respect to employment, sitting around about 4%, what economists would call structural full employment. We're getting close to it. There are more people in jobs today in the UK than there have ever been. You tie that together, that suggests to me that there, in fact, is quite a strong economic basis for a response once this period of relative uncertainty starts to move away. And that also suggests to me that the time to think about doing a bit more homework, doing a bit more due diligence on the opportunities becomes ever closer. It becomes a far more pressing opportunity to think about as the, if you like, the clouds lift and a little bit more certainty behind what is a pretty robust macroeconomic story is in play. Thanks very much. And now I'd like to hand over to Barclay for another short presentation.
Thank you. مساء الخير واهلا وسهلا فيكم. انا كثير سعيده انه انا موجوده معكم اليوم هون. بعرفكم عن حالي، انا اسمي زينة شاهين. انا بشتغل باركلي جروب هون بالكويت. رح تشوفوني كثير عندكم بالكويت. بس حبيت ابلش البرزنتيشن تاعي بفيديو صغير عن شركتنا ومين احنا، وبعدين بحكي لكم عن الكوربريت بروفايل تاعنا وايش عندنا مشاريع بلندن. I hope you enjoyed the video. رح احاول شوي ما اعيد من السلايدز بالبرزنتيشن، بس شوي بشمل ايش شفتوا هلا قلنا بالفيديو. اعرفكم عن باركلي. احنا we were founded in 1976. توني بيجلي اللي هو الشيرمان رئيس مجلس إدارة تاع الباركلي جروب، هو he's the UK's leading house provider. وطبعا زي ما شفتوا احنا we're listed on the stock exchange. احنا FTSE 100 company و I'm very proud to say that. طبعا احنا we build fantastic homes in amazing places. يعني احنا المواقع اللي بنختارها prime locations عشان تكون a place making area for everyone. فاحنا عندنا apartments و penthouses و sub penthouses. زي ما انتم شايفين بالصور في عندنا family homes مش بس بلندن، احنا موجودين خارج لندن كمان. في عندنا student living و student accommodation، فاحنا مش بس عندنا lovely penthouses وال prestige apartments، كمان في عندنا apartments للستودنتس اللي وين بيقدروا يعيشوا بمحل حلو وفيه security وفيه كل السيرفيسز، بس بنفس الوقت بيكون a Barclay product. regeneration، فاحنا basically because we are placemakers we try to regenerate an area we make nothing out of something out of nothing. Restoring heritage properties فكمان we demolish properties ونرجع نبنيهم من اول جديد. هاي شغله احنا متميزين فيها. وزي ما حكيت قبل احنا we're placemakers. رح اعبر عن هاي النقطه بسلايد اللي بعديها. وهدول صور عن المشاريع اللي احنا عملنا اياهم. وطبعا كلكم تعرفوا about Crossrail اللي هي الإليزابيث لاين اللي هو البوليت ترين اللي حاليا موجود under construction عندنا بلندن. رح يكون زي اليوروستار من لندن لباريس. نفس المبدأ رح يكون بلندن اللي هو it takes you من ايست لندن لوست لندن ب 45 دقيقة. حاليا من ايست لندن لوست لندن على القطار underground 1 hour and 45 minutes اللي هو تقريبا ساعتين إلى ربع. يعني بموت وأنا I'm traveling فالحمد لله في كروسريل. اوكي. طبعا مين احنا الباركلي جروب؟ في عندنا 5 operating companies واخر وحده هلا احنا it's under construction اسمها سين جوزيف. هاي رح تكون اول operating company اللي رح تشتغل على مشروع خارج لندن. لما احكي خارج لندن يعني رح تكون ببرمنغهام. فهذا اشي كثير بسعدني عشان احنا حاليا بس موجودين بلندن وكل حدا من الكويت ومن الاردن ومن لبنان عم بيحكوا لي زينه احنا بدنا شيء برا، بدنا شيء ارخص. قلت لهم احنا عندنا كل شيء. عندنا بلندن وعندنا ساوث اوف انجلاند وفي عندنا كمان هلا رح نشتغل على مشروع في برمنغهام. وطبعا احنا عاملين جوينت فنتشرز مع من اكبر الشركات اللي باليو كي اللي هم الناشونال جريد، تامز ووتر وبريدنشال. طبعا كلكم سامعين فيهم وتعاملنا معاهم بطريقه كبيره عندنا باليو كي. We believe in placemaking not just building. فطبعا توني بيجلي اللي هو التشيرمان صار يفكر انه احنا بس ما بدنا نبني بنايه ونعمرها ونبيعها. بدنا نعمل ريجنريشن. فور اكزامبل من احدى الكيس ستاديز اللي تاع باركلي اللي انا جد بامن فيها، انا كنت عايشه بايست لندن لسنتين لما كنت بالجامعه. كان في منطقه اسمها رويال ارسنال اللي هي كلها ولتش. كانت منطقه كثير تعيسه. كان اخوي ينزل الشباك تاع السياره اللي زين الريحه هون كيف بتقدري تعيشي؟ هلا رفعوا عليها جنه. يعني بتجنن everything's regenerated. صار الكروس ريل اللي هو البوليت ترين اللي كنت عم بحكي لكم عنه رح يبلش من ولتش ورح يروح لعند هيثرو. فقديش صار في ريجنريشن بالمنطقه والخضار. فباركلي احنا عندنا مشروع كمان هناك. باركلي طورت هاي المنطقه وهذا الاشي كمان من احدى السكسس ستوريز تاع باركلي. وطبعا احنا we focus طبعا on quality و on our consistent growth within our group. Where we operate احنا زي ما قلت لكم موجودين حاليا بلندن و South of England. وخلال 5 سنوات احنا بنينا 19,000 بيت. يعني هذا من اكبر الاتشيفمنتس بقدر اقول اللي احنا عملناها. ولما احكي انه احنا we're London's premium developer مش عشان احنا يعني بدي احكي انه احنا we're the best. طبعا احنا مو رولز رويس ولا بنتلي، بقدر احكي احنا شوي زي مرسيدس وبي ام. يعني بنعطي الافضل معنا بس بنفس الوقت we cater to all of the market مش بس الهاي اند who can afford it. احنا عندنا 65 مشروع وكلهم ببلشوا من 250,000 ل 70 مليون. فعندنا كثير رينج كبير وبكل محل. يعني حطوا اصبعكم على الماب في عندنا ديفلوبمنت بهاي المنطقه بلندن. فهذا الشيء اللي انا I feel proud of. و I think عشان هيك احنا عم نتعامل مع عده channel partners زي بوند زي JLL our international brokers or local brokers all around the world. و that's what makes us a success story. Moving on. هاي الجراف ما رح افوت بالفيجرز بس بتفرجي انه احنا حاليا عندنا زيرو ديت. لما احكي زيرو ديت يعني احنا we don't leverage on anything to finance or to build. لما حكيت لوالدي احنا عندنا زيرو ديت ما صدقني، قال لي شو زين ما في حدا ببلش بزيرو ديت، كيف يعني الشركه ما عندها زيرو ديت؟ قلت له لا احنا حاليا ما بنستعمل any source of funds من اي بنك او من اي external source. فهذا الاشي كمان مميز بالباركلي جروب. وين احنا موجودين؟ احنا UK based بس طبعا عندنا international operations. انا موجوده حاليا بدبي، نقلوني من لندن لدبي. وفي عندنا different offices بإيجا، بنجينغ، شنغهاي، هونغ كونغ وسنغافورة. هاي الجراف كمان بس بتفرجي انه احنا فوتسي 100. طبعا بتعرفوا في فوتسي 250 وفوتسي 100، بس بتفرجي هون انه احنا كباركلي we outperform كل الفوتسيز اللي موجوده عندنا باليوكي. وهذا كمان الي يعني I'm very proud to say that. Another achievement إنه إحنا we won twice the Queen's prestigious award. إيش يعني prestigious award؟ يعني إحنا we won 2 awards to do with sustainable development. We focused on CSR. We focused on sustainability and regeneration and placemaking, which is something that also is quite crucial and quite important to every corporate structure at the moment. And something quite fascinating إنه we won it once in 2008 والمرة الثانية بال 2014. هلا رح انتقل شوي عن المشاريع اللي احنا عم نحكي عنها او المشاريع اللي تقدروا تحكوا برايم لوكيشنز اللي we're launching new phases فيها. وطبعا هدول من ال4 مشاريع اللي انا بحبهم كثير عشانهم موقعهم كثير سنترال، وحبيت شوي احط لكم الصور واحكي لكم كل انفورميشن عنها. اول مشروع عندنا اليوم رويال وارك سكوير. هاي موجوده بكنزنتون. It's on High Street Kensington, so it's about 5 minutes to, not 5 minutes, 10 minutes walk to High Street Kensington Station. It's about 5-minute drive to Westfield, اللي هو أكبر shopping center عندنا بلندن. It's about 5 minutes drive to Earl's Court. No, actually less than 5 minutes. It's 2 minutes drive to Earl's Court and 5 minutes to Knightsbridge. So it's very centrally located. Some key facts, معلومات مهمة عن رويال وارك سكوير. في عندنا نيو فيز اللي هي كل بناية بنسميها اسم. هاي البناية اسمها ماكلارن هاوس. ماكلارن هاوس موجودة بزون 1 زي ما بتعرفوا بهاي ستريت كنزنتون، اللي هو كمان very close to Kensington Gardens Hyde Park. بتقدروا تحكوا يعني وحدة زي صغيرة بتقدر تمشي ب10 دقائق، يمكن اللي أصغر مني بيقدر يمشيها ب5 دقائق. فيعني it really varies قديش بعيدة عن هايد بارك. هاي البناية ماكلارن هاوس بتخلص أو it's off plan at the moment عم نبنيها، فبتخلص ب 2021. وبنفس الوقت في عنا flexible payment plans اللي هي 20 deposit 10 after 12 months بعدين 70 on completion. وطبعا كل دايركتور حسب الفلكسبيليتي تاعه. في عنا دايركتور ورا اسمه سايمون، هلا بعرفكم عليه لما نروح على مشروعه. دائما حسب احنا والنيغوشيشن مع الدايركتورز they're flexible with the payment plans. ثاني مشروع اللي اسمه 9 ميل بانك، من احدى اشهر المناطق عندنا بلندن، موجوده بويستمنستر اللي SW1. زي ما انتم شايفين هنا على ايدكم اليمين it's Houses of Parliament ولندن اي. في عندكم هذا البريدج اسمه لامبث بريدج، واللي وراه اسمه ويستمنستر بريدج. والبنايه اللي عم بحكي عنها 9 ميل بانك موجوده هون. هاي هي. احكي لكم بس شوي عن 9 ميل بانك. موجوده كمان بزون 1 اللي هي ويستمنستر. في عندنا 96 apartments. طبعا كل بنايه عندنا product mix 1 2 3 beds. Some of them have penthouses, some of them have sub penthouses. لما احكي sub penthouses يعني ما بيكون عنده 360 aspect double، بيكون يعني more or less زي البنتهاوس بس مش full on penthouse. الكومبليشن تاعها 2022 اللي هو السنه بعد المشروع اللي قبليه. وطبعا flexible payment plans اللي هم 20 10 و70. Moving on, West End Gate. قبل ما ارجع هون ما حكيت انه it's 2 minutes walk to Green Park. Green Park اللي هي Prime Central London Station. يعني it's very close على البيكاديلي لاين، يعني directly 2 minutes من هاي البناية بتكونوا على البيكاديلي لاين اللي بتوصلكم directly to Heathrow، مش ضروري تغيروا. فهاي الشغلة ميزة حلوة بهاي اللوكيشن. West End Gate Garrett Mansions. زي ما حكيت السيد دايركتور قاعد معنا ورا اسمه سايمون، مستر سايمون هاورد. هلو. هو عمل لونش لأول بناية طويلة تاور اسمها ويست مارك. حاليا عم نعمل لونش لجاريت مانشنز اللي هم المانشن بلوكس هدول تحت اللي لونهم اورنج. هذا الموقع بزون 1 اللي هو just off مارلبون رود، اللي هو 5 دقائق مشي لريجنز بارك، 5 دقائق مشي لهايد بارك. إذا بتشوفوا هون هذا هو هايد بارك، هون ريجنز بارك، هون سينت ماريز هوسبيتال ومارلبون رود، وهذا هو المشروع. فهاي من ميزة هذا المشروع انه هو very centrally located just also off Edgewood Road. في عندنا 542 شقة 1 2 3 beds penthouses وسب penthouses، وبخلص المشروع ب 2020. وفلكسبل بيمنت بلانز اللي هم 10 و10، بعدين basically 10 on deposit، 10 بعد 6 شهور، و5 بعد 12 شهر، وبعدين 75 on completion. هذا شوي أكثر flexible. واخر مشروع، هم 4 مشاريع، واخر مشروع ما بدي ازهقكم اكثر عن المشاريع. هذا بفولم W6، كمان هذا ريفر فيسنج. فولم هي بوست لندن، كثير قريبه عن تشيلسي وفولم. ما بعرف اذا بتعرفوا المنطقه كثير منيحه، بس كثير قريبه عن كينز رود اللي كنزنتون عن تشيلسي. كثير قريبه على هامر سميث اندر جراوند ستيشن، وكثير قريبه على هيثرو. الميزه بهذا المشروع انه اسعاره شوي اقل من ميلبورن مثلا، عشان هو ويستمنستر SW1 وجنب هاوسز اوف بارلمنت. فهذا المشروع ميزته انه الناس اللي مثلا ما بدهم يعيشوا تو سنترال بويستمنستر مع الضجه، بيجوا شوي عند المنطقه هيك شوي مور ريلاكسد. انا بيرسونلي بحب فيلم عشان عشت في كنزنتون عند تشيلسي ل8 سنين، فبحب المنطقه. بس شوي عن المشروع، في عندنا بنايه اسمها فيرفاكس هاوس 98 ابارتمنتس. بخلص المشروع، هذا اكثر مشروع من الاربعه اللي بخلص ب 2019 اللي هو السنه الجاي. موجود بزون 2 اللي هو مش زون 1. وكمان فلكسبل بيمنت بلانز 10 10 و70. وهاي هي ماي برزنتيشن. ان شاء الله اكون فتكم، واذا عندكم اي اسئله انا موجود، مستر بدر موجود من بوند، كل JLL موجوده. اذا بدكم اسئله عن الابارتمنتس، ايش عندنا برودكت ميكس، ايش الاسعار، ايش اللي بناسبكم، اذا حابين تعرفوا اي شيء بليز تعالوا احكوا معي لما عم تتعشوا، وانا هون بشرفني اخدمكم باللي بدكم اياه. ثانك يو. وهلا رح اعطي البرزنتيشن لجون يحكي لكم شوي عن الFX ماركت عندنا بلندن، ايش عم بيصير بالكرنسيز. جون، to you.
Thank you very much for taking the time this evening to come and look at our presentation. I'm John Goss. I look after the partnerships at Argentex, as well as I sit on the trading side, so physically trade currency. What we'd like to do this evening is talk through some of the trends, some of the analysis that we believe could play a key part in the next 12 to 24 months. Obviously, if you are investing into the UK, we do specifically focus a little bit on the pound, and we also look elsewhere at the dollar and the euro as well. Just to start with, let's give you a very brief overview of Argentex. Formed in 2012, we're dual registered in Dubai and have a head office on Bond Street in London, not too far away from that development at Green Park.
Yep. Okay. Interesting.
So formed in 2012, and since then have gone on to transact over £20 billion worth of currency. And again, we are regulated in both the UK and the DFSA in the DRC in Dubai, just to give our clients that little bit extra peace of mind. So I'd like now to go on and discuss the pound in a little detail. There are numerous things that we expect to drive the price of sterling over the next 12 to 24 months. First and foremost, I suppose, out of all these things, as has been mentioned a few times already this evening, is Brexit. We foresee there's 3 potential options with Brexit. They seem obvious, but they're worth recapping. First would be that there is no deal, which seems unlikely, but if Theresa May isn't able to get a deal, we could see sterling significantly weaken in the short term. The second is that there is a deal, but it's not necessarily brilliant one for the pound, and we lose a lot of our previous rights obligations under the EU, in which instance we would see sterling probably hold fair value as what it is now. However, if we're able to negotiate a good ex-Brexit deal from Theresa May, we think the pound is still undervalued and it could strengthen by up to as much as 9% over the next 12 months. Also in the UK, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, we are considering, in terms of the economic picture, we have ongoing issues with inflation. Inflation is a little high. The Bank of England and Governor Mark Carney would like it to be at 2%. It's currently stuck around 3%. And what that means for the UK economy is that wages aren't quite keeping up with inflation, so there is a lag there. Again, this could weigh on the pound in the short term, but we still expect sterling to strengthen over the next 12 years. If we talk about what we think of as fair value, which fair value as a concept that we say is where we think, for example, sterling dollar should be over the next 12 to 24 months, we still believe that sterling is significantly undervalued by probably as much as 10%. We have numerous reasons behind this, but I think primarily if we look at, I suppose, what the pound was doing before Brexit, it was in a far stronger position. And the macroeconomic picture in the UK we still believe to be healthy. Going back to Adam's slides earlier, there's increased optimism around the UK as the market kind of realises that the Brexit didn't affect the economy to such an extent that we expected it to. Looking ahead to the rest of the world, obviously that man at the top will be involved a lot with dollar action and dollar pricing over the next year or so. There are some severe concerns already when we look at our research teams, when we look at what's going on in the US. Twofold really. One, President Trump's slightly unorthodox way of working, firing his Secretary of State by tweet last week is a fairly good example of this. But he's also involved in numerous other areas of economic instability, and when we look at this mainly, it's the the tariffs that he's planning on bringing in. These tariffs are designed as a form of protectionism. But if we look at the last time the US actually introduced tariffs, it was back in 2003. It was President Bush. And what happened was the dollar lost 4.5%, and the steel workers whose jobs that the tariffs were designed to protect, those jobs went, and 200,000 people lost their jobs in the steel industry. So again, if we're looking at Trump, we don't see an awful lot of dollar strength coming from him as president, and indeed, we don't see that his way of working as president sits particularly well with the rest of the world. Elsewhere, we're looking at Europe. The euro is a bit of a fascinating one for us. It was memorably described by Mario Draghi as the currency being like a bumblebee, is that no one could quite know how it flew, but it did. And this is the one thing that we are very interested in at the moment. The euro is holding its strength very well against the dollar and against sterling. However, we do see risk on the horizon for the euro. I think primarily we see an awful lot of political risk. It took 5 months for Germany to form a coalition. In Spain, there were recent unrest and riots towards the end of last year. And in Italy, there's still no government formed, there's still no coalition. So whilst the euro itself, and Mario Draghi is doing a fantastic job as ECB president, in our opinion, there is still significant risk to the euro as well. In terms of what all this means and where we assist our clients, the main thing that we look to do is nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows where the market's going to go with 100% certainty. If they did, they would be certainly sitting probably on a beach somewhere. But if we look at what we try and do as a business, is we mitigate risk. So we're not, as an organisation, ever telling our clients where the best time to buy and sell is, because we can't know. We can do as much research, but we can't know for sure. So what we do is we work to develop a strategy where a client comes to us, and let's say they're investing in property. They might have a budget level that they want and they're happy with their exchange rate. We can then fix that rate with them for up to 3 years. So going back again to payment structures and payment plans, that couples quite nicely as it allows our clients to effectively to cost out the project, and also it means that they are subject to any risk. Certainly from the topics we've just covered, I think we can all probably agree that there's plenty of risk still in the market at the moment, and there's still instability. So these tools are particularly favoured at the moment. that's all from me. It's just a short overview. But I hope it was instructive, and I'd now like to pass over.
Thank you.
Immigrant is a very sensitive political topic, but you can see that there are 6 European countries that receive nearly 80% of the immigrants, and they are probably a source for housing demand as we go along. So you need to add up all these countries to really equate London. So there is a problem in terms of Brexit. There is a problem in terms of what can go away from London, in terms of jobs, in terms of real estate opportunities, but it's not going to be so big that it will affect London. Obviously, we have seen that the markets have come back in terms of the basic numbers that we are looking at. We have seen residential building permits drop after 2014, and now it is back to the same levels as it started in 2010. And also the property prices in Euro area in general has climbed, and from 100 in 2010, it's now about 108. But they're not very uniform across the cities. You can see that there are cities that have, countries that have done well. There are countries that have not done well from a residential property price point of view. The best market that clocked very good returns are Germany and UK on the top, and the worst markets are Spain and Greece on the bottom. Very simply, $100 invested in 2009 would be worth about 132 in Germany now, about 120 in UK, whereas it would be worth only about 63 in Greece and about 84 in Spain. And this is very interesting. UBS has come up with a real estate bubble index, because this question keeps coming, you know, are we in a bubble in terms of real estate? And they have constructed an index which says that anything above 1.5 is presenting itself a bubble threat. And you can see that the ones that are marked in red, they're all screaming as bubble threat according to UBS. And top on that list is Stockholm, Munich, London, and Amsterdam. According to them, all these markets suffer from a bubble fear, and other markets are so far okay as of now. So from a residential market outlook point of view, we have sourced the research from JLL, and we see that, you know, in general, the house price growth from today up to 2022 is expected to be about 13% on an average for UK as a whole, but it differs between the prime and the Greater London and Northwest and Southeast. There is also the rental growth, which is going to be strong at about 12.6%. So the data is looking good from a projection point of view, but there are variations within the markets, both from an office rental point of view and from a retail rental point of view. Of course, UK is the costliest market from both office rent as well as retail rent, but it also has the lowest vacancy. Probably the lowest vacancy explains the high price, you know, in terms of what we see here. For example, an office rent is about $140 per square meter in London. It's only about 33 in Madrid. And the same thing is observed in terms of retail as well. So we have seen that there is a huge gap between the low and the high in terms of expected returns, because we always have to focus on what we are going to be getting in future. There is a very nice forecast that is available between core Europe, UK, and peripheral Europe and the other countries, and you can see that there is a great deal of variation between low and high, which means that we need to be very careful about a particular opportunity in a particular country to make a call. You know, it's not an uniform call. Whenever you see this range very high, it calls for more introspection in terms of research. We observe that for shopping centers, which is a bit better when you compare to office. You can see that office presents huge range, whereas shopping centers are okay in terms of, you know, the contraction, and also for logistics, it's much better. So from a thematic point of view, at the moment, we're talking about very strong macroeconomy for Euro area, backed by very good numbers on the real estate metrics. There are some things which analysts are talking about. You know, they are very bullish on retail centers, logistics, and they're also talking about areas which is experiencing cyclical recovery in the office, and niche opportunities like senior living or student housing or social housing is also being touted as opportunities. But again, it will be very country specific and very theme specific, and depending on which project opportunity is presented, we need to connect the big picture with the small picture.
يعني آراء مختلفة مشكورة زينة
Thank you.
from Barclay. Thank you Adam and Will and Nathan for coming. Thank you John from Argentex. احنا حاولنا نجيب لكم كل الآراء حول السوق بلندن، مو بس تسويق عقار ولا شيء، يكون شيء شامل وتاخذون فكرة كاملة عن السوق شنو صاير. نشكر المركز كمان على حضورهم مستر راينو. اي استفسار عندكم الجماعه لا تخلونهم، ترى يعني فرصه الجماعه هذيلا من افضل الناس بالسوق موجودين، اي استفسار هم موجودين ومشكورين على النيه والحضور.
And you can see that the lending to the households.
احنا حرصنا في بوند ان نسوي هالسيمينار للتوعية في الاستثمار في بريطانيا، وحرصنا ان نحرص على حضور مؤسسات فاعلة مثل JLL والمركز المالي وارجنتكس وباركلي جروب. تجمع هالمجموعة لشرح السوق البريطاني بعد البريكزيت اعتقد انه من الاهميه بمكان. والله احنا الحقيقه احنا مو عارضين عروض، احنا قاعد صحيح نعم احنا عرضنا فكره عامه عن السوق، عن طريقه البريكزيت اللي راح تصير وبعض التوقعات بخصوص سعر الصرف للباوند والبريكزيت، ونتمنى ان نكون قدمنا شيء يعني يفيد السوق العقاري او التوعيه بالعقار الخارجي. الحقيقه كانت اراء مختلفه ما بين المركز المالي وما بين JLL وما بين ارجنتكس اللي هم مختصين في التداول العملات، فكل واحد له رأي في خصوص البريكزيت. بس الأكيد أن سوق بريطانيا كبير جدا مما يشمل مجموعة من الدول الأوروبية مع بعض، فالسوق البريطاني يظل جاذب للاستثمارات الأجنبية ويظل في طلب كبير ومقابل عرض أقل بالنص تقريبا. هم يحتاجون بحدود 50,000 وحدة سكنية في لندن، وقاعد يبنون بحدود 25,000.